In a dark and dimly lit world, a soul was drifting apart. It was in total rage, and anger could be sensed from it. Since the soul was drifting into the area known as the void, a death god was sent to check up on it. "Hello dear soul, my name is Selena, the goddess of death. May I know what made you lose your way? I'm here to guide you back to the light," spoke the death goddess as she stared at the soul. She was wearing a gothic outfit fit for her death goddess statues, and she had long shining white hair that flowed to her back. Her beautiful appearance and elegance caught the soul off guard, as it stared at the goddess for a while. But as it was angry, the soul looked at her saying, "Where the fuck am I? Don't you dare say I'm dead. 'Cause damn it, I can't be. I just bagged a baddie, I swear if I'm dead I'll go on a rampage. Even in hell." Caught off guard by the soul's weird antics, the goddess frowned as she said, "I'm sorry for your loss, but since you are here, you are indeed dead. It would seem you are lost." As she said that, using some sort of magic, she summoned a list and started to read it silently. "No. Why? Do you know how long I've been trying to get this goth chick?" She finally says yes. "I was about to take her to the greatest date of all time, when that damned truck took my life away. Fuck!" screamed the soul as it lamented its loss. 31. This is weird," said the goddess. She then stared at the soul again, confused, as part of her ability being a goddess of death. With one glance, she could see a person's name and world of origin, and how they died. As she checked the list over and over again, the soul's name wasn't on it. "Excuse me, how did you die again?" asked the goddess, to which the soul just stared at her hopelessly and said, "Some bastard lost control of his truck and struck me as I was walking on the streets." Looking again, the goddess confirmed that what the soul said was true, but the name of the soul wasn't on the list of the dead. The list was the very thing that sorted people, putting them in 3 categories: hell, heaven, and reincarnation. The special thing about the list was that it was able to predict every single soul's death day, but on the day the soul died, its name wasn't in the list. "There seems to be a mistake here. You weren't supposed to die on that day," said the goddess as she then brought a digital tablet and looked up his name. As the goddess started to speak, the soul's anger rose more and more. "You were supposed to die at the age of 87 from a heart attack. You would have married that woman and had 3 children, and one of your kids would have given birth to the man who would cure cancer." As the goddess finished her words, the soul calmed down and said, "That means you're reviving me, right? You're a goddess, you can do that." With hope back, the soul calmed down considerably, but all that shattered when the goddess said, "Unfortunately that's not possible. Once a soul reaches the void, it can't go back to its world," spoke the goddess. She added more by explaining, "Your death, it was caused by a reincarnator, someone who was given a chance at another life. He chose to be a truck driver for some reason, stating that he wants to reincarnate people. We explained that it's not how it works, but he insisted, and we gave him his desire, since he was a reincarnator, and was the one that killed you. The list of the dead doesn't have your name on it." As she finished speaking, the soul was dead inside, just looking at her with pure rage. "Are you fucking kidding me? So my death is nothing but a mistake? On your part? And you can't even revive me? Is this how hell and heaven work? You just going to take my life away and not even make it up for me?" said the soul, looking pretty pissed, but as it wasn't able to do anything, it just started to give up on everything. 18. "I apologize for what happened to you, but you are not the first case of a mistake. We have a middle ground, a solution to your problem. Unfortunately, as I stated before, reviving you is impossible, but as your life has been cut short, we won't judge you on it. Instead, I can personally guarantee heaven for you, or if you desire it." "Reincarnation," spoke the death goddess. She made sure to emphasize reincarnation, as it made her work easier, and at the same time, absolutely would satisfy the soul. 3. "Heaven or reincarnation? This is tough. Where will you reincarnate me? I don't want to be born in Algeria again. No, thank you," spoke the soul, reluctant to pick reincarnation. 14. "Reincarnation is not random. It is determined by a person's karma and impact on the world. It's not an option usually given to normal humans. In fact, only those who have achieved something that changed the world are granted such a right. But you see, you were supposed to be the grandfather of someone who would have received that right, and since he was never born, his ticket is yours. One last thing, his ticket was diamond." Even though the soul didn't know what diamond ticket meant, it was clearly something important since the goddess was nudging him to take it. He was also very reluctant to pick heaven, as in almost every religion, heaven is nothing more than the most boring place. "Fine, I'll take it, I'll reincarnate," spoke the soul, and as soon as he said that, a massive wheel, that sounded endless, emerged in front of him. "This is the Wheel of Luck. It contains every power system the universe can grant you, from world-breaking abilities and God-making systems to the most useless powers in the universe. But, you have a diamond ticket," said the goddess, as a diamond ticket emerged in her hand. She placed it on the wheel. As it disintegrated, the wheel's size decreased, now instead of its comically large size, it was reduced to the size of a building. As you can see, the diamond ticket changed the wheel, making it only produce A-rank power systems and above. Now you only have to say spin. And you'll see what your power or system will be in the new world. Okay, here we go. Spin, shouted the soul as the wheel started to spin. It was fast, too fast for him to even see what he'd get until it started to slow down. Many systems it wanted, but the soul would be lying if it said it didn't like all of them. As it stopped, the goddess smiled and said Dragon Slayer system. The power of Dragon Slayers from Fairy Tale. An A+ rank system. If you manage to use this system correctly, you'll be able to quite literally, eat magic, and be completely immune to its effect, making you a supreme hero level entity. Spoke the goddess somewhat excited with the choice 26. The soul was also happy with it. It was a fan of anime in the past, so it knew what Dragon Slayer meant, and how powerful that could be. Does that mean I reincarnate into the world of Fairy Tale? Asked the soul, to which the goddess shook her head. No, that's not how it works. In fact, since you gained a power from that world, it is off the list of reincarnation for you. Instead, there's this, she pointed, as the list disintegrated, and then emerged again. This time instead of systems, it was now worlds just like last time. All you have to say is spin. Okay, looks like the diamond ticket doesn't do anything here. Here goes nothing, spin. The wheel spun and spun just like last time until it stopped. Marvel number 426, spoke the goddess. I know what Marvel is, but what does number 426 mean? Asked the soul, to which the goddess smiled and said it's the alternate worlds number. In this case, it's the MCU from your world's movies. However, it's altered slightly. You'll understand once you're there. Now prepare, this will be nauseating. Before it could ask any more questions, the soul found itself being sucked away by some sort of vortex. Oh, and don't forget, since you're a reincarnator now, you must not leave the world more evil than you entered it. If you do so, you'll be guaranteed hell. Cursing at her multiple times for keeping that hidden from him, the soul's voice didn't reach the goddess as she waved him goodbye with a sly smile on her face. It's a boy, spoke the newer as she held the crying baby and started to clean it. The doctor continued the procedure, helping the mother relax, before nodding to the nurse to hand over the boy to his mother. Oh, he's so beautiful. Jason, look, he looks just like you, baby, spoke the mother. As she started to fiddle with the boy's hand, his father approached and kissed his head, saying, Hi son, I'm Jason, your father. Welcome to the world, son. You're the firstborn son of the Blake family. His mother smiled as she said, Hi. I'm your mother. My name is Lucy. As for you, love, well, we decided to call you Aiden. Hearing his parents' words, the baby started to cry, a sign of good health according to the doctors, but in reality, the screams were nothing but a reflection of his mind. Damn, she looks good. No, don't think like that, Aiden. She is your mother. Aiden. Ahaha, I'm already getting used to that. Hear me, world. Aiden Blake the Dragon Slayer will be the greatest in the world. Oh, wait? What is my goal in this life? In her kitchen, Lucy was cooking dinner, while worrying about her son's fast progress. Maybe I should talk to Professor Charles about him, she sighed. Ever since he became 2 years, she noticed his incredible powers, being able to raise tables and chairs above his head. He had the strength of a normal adult at the age of 3. At the age of 4 he asked his parents for a personal gym. They weren't able to get him all the equipments, but whatever they got him, he was able to work out with them. At some point even his father wasn't able to lift as much as Aiden. Surprisingly, his body didn't have many changes. It looked like any normal child looked, aside from his white hair, but the couple knew he must have inherited it from his mother Lucy. She was what in this world are known as mutants. Lucy found out about her powers at the age of 16, however, unlike Raiden, who she assumed had them since birth, which is why she worried heavily about Aiden. Relax, honey, he's going to turn out fine. He's my kid after all. But I do worry about how he would take the news, said Jason as he helped his loving wife. Jason wasn't a nobody, he was in fact, a SHIELD agent. He has gone through many dangerous missions himself, but he was a normal human. His skill set was that of an elite trained soldier. It was also one of the biggest reason he was surprised by Aiden's strength. I don't think it's going to matter much. Aiden is very mature for his age. I think him finding out he'll be having a little sister isn't going to be a problem, said Lucy as she turned around to the kitchen entrance, seeing Aiden coming in. I'm having a sister? The two parents turned to him shocked as they wanted to tell him a better way, but quickly Jason said, Yeah, your mom is pregnant. Now listen, I know you might think that we'll be giving her much more attention, but that's not the case. Why would I think that? If I'm having a sister, then she'd be a baby. Of course you'd have to give her more attention, replied Aiden as he looked weirdly at his dad. Seeing his son's reaction, Jason sighed, saying, God, I was worried for nothing. You're the best son ever. And future great brother too. I did say he wouldn't be annoyed with it. It's the destiny of all older cool boys to be admirable in the eyes of their little sisters, said Lucy. Aiden cringed a bit, and took a seat next at kitchen counter and said, "Can I take my dinner to my room?" This made Lucy look at him with a frown, saying, "No, you may not." The one ironclad rule in the Blake household was, no one can eat in their rooms. The rule had been established from numerous occasions when Aiden would just wolf down his food so that he would get back to training or studying. One day, his mother caught him doing just that in his room, laughing to himself, cramming big chunks in his mouth before they were even chewed. It was the final straw. She was not going to let her son skip enjoying his meals, childhood, and food just to hurry through, as if table pleasure were another list to check off, and so the rule stood, with no room for argument. He went back to his room and sat down, surrounded by a wide selection of books, journals, newspapers, and his notebook, marked with notes from cover to cover. He absorbed it all, piecing together the world he found himself in. This is the Marvel world, he thought, but it's not like the MCU exactly. There were mutants here, and Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters had already existed, its students acknowledged as a heroic group. That didn't surprise him the most, though. Not even the fact that the school was already up and running. More than anything, what surprised him was the view from his window. It was a shocker. There, in New York, he could see the famous, even by that time, the already iconic Stark Tower, but not a dozen minutes walk down the street was another building, the Baxter Building and the Fantastic Four. Aiden learned that his father worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and was acquainted with the Fantastic Four as a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative, similar to how Natasha had been with Stark in the early days of the MCU. His own mother was a mutant too, but she had still kept her powers a secret from him. It had felt as though she was saving it for use later in his life, or teaching him when he was more mature. Lucy was part-time at Xavier's school as a teacher, 2 days a week, but, hell, she somehow pulled down a salary that would put most people to shame. But this night, something even more significant was crossing Aiden's mind. In less than 10 minutes, he would be 5 years old, and with this birthday, the system he had been waiting for would finally be open. How does it work? What can I do with it? His curiosity burned as he scribbled in his notebook. He looked out at the night sky. An excitement began to build within him, and yet those same questions that had haunted him for the past 5 years lingered. What was to be his life's purpose? Did he want to become a hero and travel the world, the universe even? His destiny, as the goddess had insinuated, was to be the protector of Earth. Something, however, seemed amiss. He just knew that he needed to take action. Aiden let out a deep breath, and with hardened resolve, he mumbled to himself, "I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but one thing is for sure, be the greatest hero, find someone to love, then live happily ever after? Everything else will follow suit." Still awake due to excitement, Aiden was shocked when something popped up in front of his eyes. Congratulations! Dragon Slayer system has been unlocked. 1. Name, Aiden Blake. Age, 05. Race, human 50%/mutant 50% 24. Stats. Level, 4-1. Exp, 2068, 723 until next level. Extra stat points, 6. Strength, 12. Agility, 8. Endurance, 7. Magic, 7. Resistance, 6. Charm, 5. Dragon Slayer Affinity, 7. Generation 1. Fire, 00% 1. Sky, 21% 9. Iron, 04% 2. Sage: 00% 10. Watching the first screen, Aiden was a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of information, but he found that pressing on anything, it would explain it in details. Extra stat points. Host can appoint extra stat points in any stat except Dragon Slayer Affinity. Host gains 1 from each level up, and can gain more by completing missions. Strength measures physical power and muscle mass. You are stronger than an average human, capable of lifting heavier objects and delivering more powerful physical attacks. Agility represents your speed, flexibility, and reflexes. You are slightly below average in these areas, meaning you might be a bit slower or less coordinated compared to most people. Endurance measures stamina and the ability to withstand physical strain or pain. You tire more quickly and may not be able to sustain intense physical activities for as long as an average person. 1. Magic represents your capacity to use or resist supernatural forces. You have minimal magical abilities, possibly only sensing magic or using very basic spells. Resistance indicates your ability to resist harmful effects, such as poison, disease, or magical attacks. You have almost no resistance. making you highly vulnerable to such effects. Charm reflects your ability to influence others, whether through charisma, appearance, or social skills. You have typical social skills and are neither particularly persuasive nor uncharismatic too. Dragon Slayer Affinity, the user's affinity with different kinds of Dragon Slayer magic. Currently only Generation 1 has been unlocked, other generation and affinities can be unlocked by leveling up or through missions. 11. Aiden looked at his stats, and started to think about his current goals. My strength is the only high-ranked one, I guess all that work wasn't for nothing, and since I'm still 5, having these stats must be good. My magic and resistance are things I should work on, but most importantly, my Dragon Slayer magic affinities. Still I'm curious, why am I level 4? I had assumed I'd be level 5. As if it hurt his thoughts, the system produced another explanation. Host has reached level 4 due to his efforts in training himself. Host can level up by defeating enemies, and gaining experience through them. Mission can also sometimes grant exp, as well as training, but Host should know that the most exp that he can gain must come from the number of enemies he defeats. His dream of training till level 100 as if he's One Punch Man died instantly, but at least Aiden now knew that the more enemies he defeats, the more he's going to level up. Wait a minute, I'm 5. Where the hell am I supposed to get enemies? Looking at his stats, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. All the work he'd put in over the last 4 years hadn't been in vain. Training as a child was no small feat. He thought after all he had to do it with short arms, short legs, and tiny hands. Everything was a challenge, but maybe that's why the system rewarded me with 3 levels already. It had been one of the hardest things he'd ever done, but he was willing to push through for 2 reasons. First, he was just plain bored. Living as a child was one of the most boring experiences imaginable. I understand why we don't remember shit as kids. I mean, it's literally nothing. I did nothing all the time. Thought Aiden, remembering how he wasn't trusted with anything and had to come up with ways to even begin working out. The last 2 years had been better, though. He managed to convince his parents to let him use some workout equipment, although it took a lot of persuasion. It put a smile on him every time he checked his strength stat. It was at 12, and according to the system, the average for humans was 10. That meant he was stronger than the average person, which was both surprising and satisfying. As for the second reason he'd been training, this world. It didn't make any sense to him. He'd been observing and taking notes, and it was just too peaceful. Sure, there were dangerous incidents now and then, but they were rare, maybe once every 6 months. Just the other day, the news was buzzing about the Hulk escaping and causing some chaos. People died, and it was just like the movies. He was throwing tanks and all that, but it was just another random event that happens once a year. He found it odd because, with the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and all the other heroes around, there should have been more chaos. But it was so calm, and that worried him. The goddess had said this world was in danger. If that was true, despite all these heroes, the threat must be something none of them could handle, that bitch of a goddess. Instead of some happy-go-lucky life with an endless harem. I have to start working out as a child just so I can be strong enough for this damn threat. As he remembered his goal, his attention turned back to his stats. His agility and endurance were below average for a human, but considering he was only 5 years old, they were pretty impressive. His charm was at 5, the average for humans. The system said the maximum for a human was 10, so he could easily surpass that if he focused on it. But he wasn't too concerned about charm. His magic and resistance, on the other hand, were awful. His magic stat was at 2, which meant he could barely sense any magic, and after 5 years, he hadn't sensed a thing. That worried him. His resistance was even worse. It was at 1. I could probably die from a goddamn fever. What's with this resistance? He attributed this to being a child, but still, it was alarming, so he decided to use his 6 extra stat points to boost his magic and resistance. His resistance went up to 4, and his magic to 5. But even at 5, magic still felt like nothing. He couldn't sense anything, which only added to his concern. He checked his Dragon Slayer affinity. The system showed he had only unlocked Generation 1, with just 4 elements. Was that all he could get for Generation 1, or could he unlock more? Fire was at 0%, which made sense since he'd never interacted with it. Sky, however, was at 21%, which was odd. The system explained that air was everywhere, so his affinity for it increased naturally. Iron was at 4%. Funny, isn't it? According to the system, the reason my iron affinity is at 4% is because of me working out with iron equipments every day. Though it wasn't significant, Sage was at 0%, which didn't surprise him. He wasn't even sure what Sage was supposed to be. The thing he needed to focus on now was magic, he couldn't use his Dragon Slayer abilities without it. After all, it was called Dragon Slayer magic. So, he decided to try meditating, just like they did in anime and TV shows. He figured if he just sat down, relaxed, and concentrated, he'd eventually start sensing magic. So that was a fucking lie. Weeks turned to months, and nothing. He spent 6 months meditating for 3 hours a day and still couldn't sense anything. This is stupid. Main characters start sensing shit in like 5 minutes. Am I doing something wrong? Over those long and very useless 6 months, his experience points increased by a measly 20 points over 6 months. I need 700 for the next level. What the hell? It was frustrating, but he kept at it. Then, after about a year, he started to feel something. He almost started dancing when he did feel it, but he soon realized it wasn't exactly magic, but there was something around him, something he could sense and even move slightly. This is mana. Mana particles. Yes. 1. Eventually, he realized that if he tried hard enough, he can use his wind magic and turn the particles of mana into wind, creating a small breeze around his. The system immediately gave him a notification about how his wind affinity had increased to 34%. He kept practicing, and eventually, he got a system notification. Basic wind magic level 1. Let's fucking go, baby. He was clearly thrilled, but as soon as he tried it, he ended up creating a big mess in his room, knocking many things over. Looks like practicing here at home is not a good idea. Sigh. After a while, Aiden managed to find a perfect place for training. An abandoned warehouse near his house. It was close enough not to worry his parents but far enough to avoid detection. 5. School is annoying as hell, so having this place to release some pent-up stress and train is good. In that warehouse, he trained hard. His wind magic improved. Of course he wasn't on the level of Wendy from the anime, but he was on the road to it. Aiden even tried to fly. Very unsuccessful, however. In fact, he tried so many times and fell so much that his endurance increased by 1. Eventually, with constant work and usage of magic, he managed to get a new skill as well. Magic regeneration level 1. And that's how 3 years passed. It had been 3 years since Aiden started his magical improvement journey, and life had been different in small but very meaningful ways. His little sister, Evelyn, whom he liked to call Eve, had just started to call him Big Brother. Seeing the journey from her toddler days to her calling him Big Brother filled Aiden with a sense of responsibility and pride. 9. I never had siblings in my past life, never knew it felt this good. Evelyn, I'll protect you with my life, thought Aiden, remembering his sister. Then the school bell rang. Happy, he immediately stood up. 9. With his schoolwork out of the way, Aiden made his way towards the warehouse that had basically turned into a second home, a place where he could go and train without any interruptions. Today was no different, except for the fact that he couldn't shake the feeling of someone trailing after him. In these last 3 years, Raiden was very familiar of how mana worked in his surroundings, and as such reached a point where he could sense different people's mana presence. This wasn't going to help him much, since the place was crowded, except for the fact that the mana that was tailing him was of someone he was very familiar with. Father? He didn't even slow his stride, and his face remained as it always did, calm and unassuming. But his thoughts were already racing. So he's figured out that I'm coming late, and I must have a reason. I understand. I wouldn't like it if my 8-year-old kid started to come home late. If that's the case, then yeah, I have a great idea. If his father was concerned enough to follow him, Aiden would let him see what he expected to see. When they reached the warehouse, Aiden began his plan. He called up weak gusts of wind and practiced with it, keeping them purposefully weak, making it look like he just recently started his training. He made sure to fail a few times to increase his father's worries. Yeah, I'd land a role in Hollywood with this level of acting. That evening, Aiden found himself sitting across his parents. The atmosphere in the room was a little different as the moods had changed to become serious. His mother had a thoughtful face, and his father's eyes showed concern together with determination. Aiden, his mother said as he thought, here it goes. Child mode, activated. We have noticed some things and think it's time we talked about them. Aiden turned his head slightly, as if he didn't know what she was talking about. What things? He asked, giving an innocent answer. His mother looked toward his father for a moment, then turned back to Aiden. Your father saw you doing something today, something magical. Hearing that, Aiden opened his eyes wide. Then looked at his dad in shock. I can explain. No, don't worry, honey. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. We think you are a mutant. Just like me, honey, said Lucy as she turned her skin to that of a scales. Whoa. A mutant? Like you? Aiden provided a shocked look at his mutant side of his mother. As he's never seen it before. Give me my Oscar already. She nodded, giving a small smile. Yes, my ability allows me to create scales, something like those of a dragon from fairy tales. We think you might have inherited some abilities too. Aiden looked from one parent to the other, mixing curiosity with concern. I didn't know. I thought this was something I could do on my own. His mother reached out and placed a hand on his. You're not alone, Aiden. She then looked at her husband and said, Jason said that you were struggling to control your powers. If you want, there's a place you can learn to control your powers in, where you can meet others like you, and not feel alone. It's called Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. It's where I work. Would you like it, honey? Aiden paused as if reflecting upon the offer. I think I'd like that, he said, mixing some doubt into his voice. Aiden's parents looked at each other gratefully, his mother moving in to hug Aiden gently. We're proud of you, Aiden. You're going to do great things. Aiden accepted and returned the hug, his mind already turning to what lay ahead. This was perfect. Now I can finally practice without worry, although, how the fuck do I deal with Xavier's mind-reading bullshit? 8. His awe overwhelmed him as they approached the grand gates guarding Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. He had, of course, seen the place a million times on TV shows, movies, and comics, but it was wholly different up close. The sprawling mansion, with its beautifully manicured lawns, large stone facade, and towering architecture, was so much more impressive up close. This almost feels surreal. I can't believe I'm actually in Marvel. This is amazing. He spoke out loud, trying to keep the excitement of a young child. He had to act like this was all new to him. His parents expected that of him, after all, and he had to play the part. Inside, though, his mind was weighing everything from the security features hidden in the architecture to the subtle power fluctuations he could sense emanating from various rooms. These energies I sense from inside, they're not magic, some of them are incredibly powerful. I suppose that's the X-Man for you. His mother, Lucy, was smiling brightly. She was proud of her workplace. You'll love it here, Aiden. This place has helped so many kids like you. Lucy wouldn't shut up about this place when we first met. It's been through some rough time, but it can't be denied that many great people came out from here, especially your mom, said Jason as he looked at Lucy with love. He nodded, trying to sound innocent. Yeah, it looks really cool. But deep inside, he was already thinking about what kind of training he could get here. The potential was endless. This father of mine, he's using this opportunity to score points with mom. As they walked through the grounds, he caught glimpses of the students around them, some more obvious mutants than others. There was a kid with scales covering his arms and legs, another with eyes that glowed like embers, and then a girl who casually flicked her tongue out like a lizard. Aiden's eyebrow rose. Okay. I did not expect to see that. 1. His parents chatted cheerily with a few people, but his mind went elsewhere. This place was a goldmine of potential knowledge and power, but he had to be so very, very careful. He wouldn't want to show his hand too soon, especially because the school was chock full of telepaths and psychics. Charles and Jean Grey might be an actually problem. I'd how they'd react if they figure out I have a system. TSK, annoying probing bastards. Soon enough, they entered. Wide and grand, the hallways were full of portraits of heroes past and students who furthered the prestige of the place. He felt it was as if the school was whispering its history to him. He was enjoying it all when a voice so familiar interrupted his thoughts. Speak of the fucking devil. Lucy. It's been too long, the woman spoke. Her voice was light and friendly. As she approached to give Aiden's mom a quick hug, the voice belonged to a familiar redhead that Aiden was confident he could recognize anywhere, Jean Grey. Jean. It has, hasn't it? Lucy replied warmly, responding to the hug. She then placed her hand on Aiden's head as she said, "This is my son Aiden." Jean turned and took an interesting look at Aiden as she spoke with a kind expression. Good to meet you, Aiden. I'm Jean Grey, but on school ground I'm Ms. Grey. Lucy's told me much about you. Aiden gave her the widest cute smile he could create as he spoke. Nice to meet you, Ms. Grey. Inside, though, he was considerably calculating. Looking at her, one wouldn't consider her much, but this woman is a force so powerful it could destroy an entire world like it's nothing. Fucking hell. Jean gave him a soft smile but didn't press further. I hope you're excited. You're going to do great here. He nodded, giving his most convincing childlike grin. Yeah. I think so too. After the exchange, they continued down the hall toward the principal's office. The sound of his heartbeat began to quicken as he knew very well who they were about to meet. The probing bastard himself, Charles Xavier, founder of the school, one of the most powerful telepaths to have ever existed, and a man who could uncover all of his secrets if given half the chance. All right, Aiden. Play it cool. You got this. Inside Xavier's office, everything was cool, but the tension was palpable. The man at the desk was unruffled, the perfect portrait of an authoritative control, soft-seeming eyes shining with knowledge of things which weren't bounded by flesh. Behind him was a man-beast hybrid. Damn, I can actually see Beast's reflection on his bald head. Aiden Blake. Xavier nodded to him. I have heard a great deal about you. Aiden nodded back, carefully choosing his words. Thank you, Professor. It's great to meet you as well. He was trying to be the polite kid his parents wanted him to be, yet there was always that maturity slipping into his voice. Lucy has recommended you, and as such I'm happy to welcome you, but first, we're going to run a few tests, nothing invasive, just to see what we can learn about your abilities, Xavier explained. His tone was so benevolent, yet Aiden could sense the probe behind every word. Beast, who was sitting next to Xavier, brought out a watch-like device. Supposedly it could tell the level of mutant power one had. With the tests underway, Aiden was as closed off as one could be without arousing suspicion. He knew this equipment wouldn't be able to make full sense of what his system was or what his capabilities entailed. Sure enough, the watch-like device didn't even activate. Lucy, are you sure Aiden is a mutant? As Xavier asked that, Aiden replied by using some small wind gust to push few pens away in front of him. Ah, I see, then it seems like there is some sort of block, or perhaps a malfunction of the device. Spoke Xavier, but still thinking to himself, or your potential is beyond what our systems can currently read, Xavier thought whilst frowning. Aiden shrugged lightly. I'm still figuring things out myself. It's why I'm here anyways. But then, as the conversation continued, Aiden felt something, an intrusion, subtle but unmistakable. The system flashed a notification in his mind. Warning, mental intrusion detected. Mind reading attempt blocked. Due to the nature of the system, host is immune to all mental intrusions. He turned to Xavier then, his eyes narrowing slightly. Professor, I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that again. His voice was cold, a sharp contrast to the innocent child he was pretending to be a moment before. Xavier's eyes widened in slight surprise. I apologize, Aiden. I didn't mean to intrude. It's a habit, sometimes. Aiden's eyes never budged as they narrowed. Yeah, well, habits like that'll piss people off. He couldn't afford to be threatening, but neither was he going to let Xavier, or anyone for that matter, inside his head. Xavier watched him a bit before nodding. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll keep out of your head from here on out. The tension in the room just hung there for a moment until finally his father cleared his throat to break the silence. Is everything all right? Yeah, Aiden said, forcing a smile back onto his face. Just new experiences. Xavier nodded, but he could tell the wheels were already churning inside the man's brain. He was just the kind of guy to retreat and then fight another day. In Aiden's view, this was far from over, but for now, the system backed him. As they finally exited Xavier's office, his parents spoke excitedly on the possibility of his integration into the school. But still, he had nothing to say, his mind still racing with the conversation. Later that night, in the privacy of Beast and Storm's company, Xavier brooded over what had transpired. There's something different about him, Xavier began. I've never encountered a mental block like that. He wasn't just resisting or using some sort of equipment, and I'm confident he has no mental powers. It was as if his mind was completely closed off, shielded by something beyond our understanding. Beast adjusted his glasses and furrowed his brow. That's highly unusual, especially for one so young. Xavier nodded. I think he may be a great deal more powerful than we realize, possibly an Omega-level mutant, but I'm not sure. We've got plenty of time to see his future and to guide him. Storm's expression turned thoughtful. Then I'll be keeping an eye on him. If he's that powerful, he could be a great asset, or a dangerous enemy. Xavier exhaled a sigh. Yes. We will have to be careful. But I feel that he is not our enemy, at least, not yet. A hush fell over the room as they all sat thinking about the enigma that was Aiden Blake. Aiden stood in front of the classroom door, the weight of anticipation growing with each passing second. Storm gave him a gentle nod, encouraging him to go in. It wasn't his first time entering a new environment, but this situation was different. He wasn't just another student at a regular school, he was at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, a place where each student had powers that set them apart. As the door slid open, Aiden saw a classroom full of young mutants, all immersed in their own conversations. His eyes darted from face to face, noting their diversity. Some of them were familiar to him, having seen them in the comics or movies. There was a boy with ice blue eyes, Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, sitting next to a girl with brown hair tied into a loose ponytail, Kitty Pryde, also known as Shadowcat. She was chatting animatedly with another girl wearing a bright yellow jacket and oversized sunglasses, Jubilation Lee, or Jubilee. Everyone, Storm's authoritative voice cut through the chatter, this is Aiden. He'll be joining us from today. Aiden waved awkwardly, trying to play the part of a new kid. It felt weird, though, he was far older mentally than any of them, but he had to maintain the facade of a child. Kitty Pryde flashed him a warm smile and waved back eagerly. Hi, Aiden. You can sit here if you want, she said, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. He took the seat, nodding appreciatively. Thanks, Kitty. She tilted her head slightly, her curiosity piqued. So, what's your power? Aiden hesitated for a second, then replied, wind? I guess. It's a bit different from what you guys might have. Kitty's eyes sparkled with excitement. That's so cool. I've never heard of anyone having wind powers like that. Aiden smirked inwardly. Of course, you haven't. That's because it's Dragon Slayer magic, not just mutant abilities. But outwardly, he kept it simple. Yeah, it's pretty unique. Kitty leaned in a bit closer, clearly interested in making a new friend. Maybe we can practice together sometime. I'm still figuring out how to phase through stuff without, getting stuck in the floor. Aiden chuckled, finding her optimism and innocence refreshing. Sounds like a plan. Storm, who was also monitoring the conversation from the front of the class, smiled approvingly. Though she was here to teach, she had made it a point to keep an eye on Aiden, knowing that there was something more to him than met the eye. She could sense it. His energy felt different from other mutants, but she didn't push the matter, yet. Alright, class, today we're going to go over elemental manipulation, Storm began, turning the attention back to her lesson. Not all of you have elemental powers, but understanding them will help you in combat situations. Aiden perked up at the mention of elemental powers. This was right up his alley, though he had to downplay his own capabilities. Kitty, sitting beside him, shot him an encouraging smile. Storm's lecture delved into how the elements were linked to nature and energy, how mutants like her, who controlled the weather, had a symbiotic relationship with the elements. Aiden couldn't help but think about his own wind magic. His control over air was something entirely different from a mutant's control over the elements. His power was raw, ancient, and derived from magic, not mutation. Throughout the class, Kitty continued to show interest in Aiden, not out of any competitive spirit, but because she genuinely wanted to know more about him. She had that kind of open, friendly personality that made Aiden feel at ease. They laughed quietly together at some of Bobby's jokes from across the room, and even Jubilee gave Aiden a thumbs up when he answered one of Storm's questions. Storm occasionally glanced at Aiden, observing how easily he integrated into the group. She had a soft spot for the new students, especially those who seemed to carry a weight larger than their years. She knew that Aiden was special, but she wasn't sure how or why just yet. As the class ended, Storm wrapped up the lesson with a stern reminder, tomorrow, we'll have a field trip to a controlled area for combat training. Make sure you're all prepared. Dismissed. Kitty and Jubilee both turned to Aiden. Field trip. Are you excited? Kitty asked. Aiden nodded, keeping his response light. Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to see how everything works. Truth be told, he wasn't just interested, he was curious to see how far he could push himself in a controlled setting, without revealing too much of his Dragon Slayer magic. But there was a flicker of unease in his mind. A fucking field trip on the second day of me coming here? That's a flag and a half, Vale, but at least I might get experience. Across town, deep in the shadows of a city alley, a figure moved quietly, avoiding the gaze of the public. The man had been planning this for weeks. The Brotherhood of Mutants had scattered for the time being, but he had never let go of his hatred for the X-Men. He clenched his fists, feeling the familiar rumble of the earth beneath his feet respond to his emotions. Those high and mighty X-Men think they're untouchable, hiding away at that school of theirs. He muttered, leaning against a crumbling wall. But I'm going to remind them who they're dealing with. His vendetta had been simmering ever since the last skirmish. He blamed the X-Men for his failures, for the loss of his standing among the Brotherhood. And now he had a plan to get back at them. They'd soon be going on a field trip, away from their sanctuary and out in the open. The perfect opportunity. The man glanced at the small device in his pocket, a tracker. He knew where they would be, and he was going to make sure that the ground they stood on would betray them. Let's see how well they handle a little disaster. Aiden sat at the dinner table, his fork idly pushing vegetables around his plate as his thoughts remained caught up with the day's events at Xavier's school. His dad was finishing up his meal, while his mom, Lucy, gave him a curious look as if to say, come on, spill it about his first day. So, how did it go? Lucy asked, laying her fork down and giving Aiden her undivided attention. Was it what you expected? Aiden nodded as he swallowed his mouth full. Yeah, it was all right. I liked the class. Storm's a good teacher, kinda serious, but she knows her stuff. He paused for a moment, then asked, when am I gonna get to study with you? Lucy smiled, her head shaking slightly. Soon, but don't get too excited. I don't teach the students about their powers, Aiden. I'm a general teacher. You know, reading, math, science, the same stuff kids your age learn in regular schools. Aiden blinked, somewhat surprised. Really? So no mutant stuff? No mutant stuff, Lucy said with a chuckle. That's for the specialized teachers, like Storm. I'm here to make sure everyone keeps up with normal subjects. There's more to life than powers, you know. Before he could reply, a small, all too familiar voice piped up from the hallway. Big bro, will you play with me? He turned and saw Evelyn, his now 3-year-old sister, peering around the corner. Her wide eyes were hopeful, holding a worn, stuffed dragon. Still smiling, Aiden got up just as his mom spoke again. I heard about the field trip tomorrow, and if you really don't feel up to it, you can stay home. I don't want you getting pressured on your second day out. Aiden shook his head. It's fine, Mom. I'll go. It's just a stupid field trip, right? Lucy gave him a small smile, though her eyes remained with a ring of worry. Just be careful, okay? I will, he said, standing from the table. No big deal. At this, Lucy nodded, finally dismissing him to go and play with Evelyn. Scooping his little sister into his arms, he went toward the living room and spent the rest of the evening with her giggling all over the house. The next morning, after several wishful nights, Aiden climbed on the yellow school bus. Storm was standing near the entrance, yelling above the excited chatter of students, guiding each kid to a seat and telling them last-minute instructions. Remember, Storm called out in her commanding, no-nonsense tone, no using your mutant powers during the trip. We're going to the zoo, not the danger room. Keep your hands to yourselves, follow instructions, and stay with the group at all times. The only half-listening Aiden looked around the bus for a place to sit, her words going through an ear and out of the other. Finding an empty seat near the back of the bus, he plopped himself down and relaxed. He didn't even have time to get too comfortable before Kitty Pryde scampered onto the bus, lighting up the entire bus with her eyes the moment she saw him. Aiden. Cheerfully, her eyes sparkling as she hurried down the aisle. She plopped down beside him without the slightest hesitation. Mind if I sit here? Sure, said Aiden, edging a look sideways at her. He didn't really mind her company, but still he felt weird about it. I'm an adult, he reminded himself, his awkwardness heightened by Kitty beaming at him as if they were instant best friends, and here I am, stuck with a kid following me around. With the others piling in, Bobby and Jubilation located themselves in front of him and Kitty, talking together as they sat down. Sighing with a soft snuffle, he relaxed as his eyes drifted out the window. The thought was just about to cross his mind that this was going to be a very boring trip. Of course, then Kitty had to go and spoil the plan. Hey, so, what's your favorite hobby, Aiden? She suddenly asked, turning to him with those big green eyes wide with curiosity. Aiden blinked, snapping out of his thoughts. I dunno. I guess. Reading? It was a safe answer. He wasn't about to tell her his favorite hobby was destroying makeshift mannequins with his wind magic. Oh, that's cool, Kitty said, not missing a beat. What do you like to read? Comic books? I love superhero comics. Or do you like fantasy stuff? Dragons and magic? He smiled faintly, though inside he was a little uneasy. He didn't hate her, but it was awkward having a literal 8-year-old stick to him like this. I guess a bit of both, said Aiden, thinking to himself, you are someone I read about in comics. Really? That is great. Do you play any sports? I used to play soccer back home. We can start a team at school. Aiden nodded politely, trying to keep up with her enthusiasm. Soccer, huh? We should. I think I'd be this class's Cristiano Ronaldo. He spoke, as his thoughts drifted again. He hadn't thought about sports in a while. He used to be a big fan of football. I suppose I'll have to get used to calling it soccer since I'm in America. The bus started to move, and Kitty continued to talk endlessly, asking about his hobbies, favorite shows, whether he enjoyed school so far. Aiden could only answer as well as he could, though not being able to shake the feeling of weirdness throughout. Sigh, I am a grown man. He thought to himself, gazing out the window to avoid her eager gaze, and here I am stuck talking to a kid. The bus stopped in front of the entrance to the zoo, and the students started getting off it, bubbling with excitement. Stepping out, Aiden took in the sprawling landscape of the zoo, vibrant, alive color exhibits and an abundance of greenery. The sun was warm that morning, humming sounds filled the place with excited chatter coming from his classmates. Storm, who was accompanying them along with Beast, started to organize the group. Stay close everybody. We start off with the main exhibits, then take a break for lunch. Remember, stick together. And enjoy the zoo and learn about the animals. As they entered, suddenly the ground began to shake violently. The shakes were strong enough to make Aiden have to turn towards bench and grab onto it. Families screaming, trying to balance, people being thrown off their feet, the zoo erupted into chaos. Turning full circle, once stable paths crumbled, and large cracks snaked through the pavement. People were injured, bleeding from cuts and scrapes, others lay on the ground, faces contorted in pain. Terrified shouts intertwined with the quake in a cacophony of terror. Storm's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone, stay calm. Get to safety. She was hurrying through the panicked crowd, working her way toward guiding people towards the zoo's building. Beast got those who had fallen or gotten trapped by debris with his strength and agile movements. His big form moved purposefully, lifting fallen branches and debris off injured visitors. Aiden, Kitty, Bobby, Jubilation, and 3 students were separated from everyone else. They found themselves forced right to the back of the zoo, with only felled trees and smashed fences around them. The rumble, never continuous, never predictable, persisted. Another more violent tremor yet tried to reorganize. The ground buckled, sending them sprawling as the landscape changed dramatically. Aiden could barely stay upright as the ground opened, splitting with a deep fissure that cut them off from the zoo. The shaking had finally ceased, and the students found themselves in a part of the zoo they had never experienced. The smashed remains of exhibits and fallen debris were everywhere, with threatening shadows for every faint ray of light that shone overhead. As the dust began to settle, a menacing figure emerged from the shadows, his very presence exuding a sinister aura. He moved into view, smiling chillingly, his eyes alight with malign pleasure. "Ah, my first group of victims has finally arrived," he said, with a voice dripping in dark, sadistic humor. Kitty's eyes went round in terror. "Who are you?" she stammered. The man laughed, a harsh, jeering noise which echoed through the wreckage. "Why should I bother telling you who I am when you're just going to die anyways?" But Aiden, unfazed and unafraid by the tempest raging around him, merely turned to Kitty and said, in dismissive tone, "Don't you mind him, Kitty. He's just a third-rate villain who thinks he's strong 'cause he attacks kids." The man's eyes flashed hot with anger as he took a step closer to Aiden. "How dare you call me third-rate? I am Avalanche." His fists were clenched, his anger palpable. "You think you can disrespect me and get away with it?" Aiden raised an eyebrow. "If you weren't third-rate, you wouldn't try this hard to avoid Storm and Beast. Instead, here you are, trying to take out a bunch of kids." Avalanche's anger detonated. "You think you're so smart? I'm gonna love making sure you and your little friends never see the light of day again."